Hello everybody, this is Bruce Najor, debate coach at Michigan State University. In this presentation, we're going to be talking about terms in the resolution, what they mean, and what possible affirmatives could be run based on those terms. Okay, so let's get into it. First, just as a refresher, the resolution for this year, the United States federal government should substantially increase its security cooperation with the North Atlantic Treaty Organization in one or more of the following areas: artificial intelligence, biotechnology, cybersecurity. I broke that down into several different terms that I think have a limiting function: United States federal government, security cooperation, NATO, and then the three particular areas: artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and cybersecurity. I'm going to be focusing mostly on security cooperation and then the three particular areas. United States federal government should substantially one or more of the following, I think, are pretty self-explanatory. North Atlantic Treaty Organization will be talked about in more detail in a different presentation. Okay, so the first limiting term that I think is worth talking about is security cooperation. First of all, what is security cooperation and what isn't security cooperation? Well, security cooperation refers to activities authorized by provisions in Title 10 and the National Defense Authorization Acts, or the NDAAs. They define security cooperation as any program or activity, including any exercise or interaction of the Department of Defense with the security establishment of a foreign country to build self-defense, multinational operations, provide armed forces, and build relationships. If that sounds pretty broad to you, I tend to agree. It's a pretty broad term. It is, however, arguably distinct from a different term, security assistance, which you'll see throughout the topicality cards in the topicality file that Mr. McCaffrey put together in the core. Security assistance, arguably distinct from security cooperation, is a term that is commonly used to refer to the 6 budget accounts for which the State Department requests international security assistance appropriations. Unlike security cooperation, security assistance lacks a standard terminology, meaning that it's more loosely defined than security cooperation. While it's true that some people can throw around the term security cooperation loosely as well, there is a few more codified examples of security cooperation than there is security assistance. However, it does not mean that it is always defined in a distinct relationship. Sometimes security cooperation can encompass security assistance. In the topicality file, for example, there's a piece of evidence that says that security cooperation refers to all U.S. government assistance provided to foreign law enforcement, security, and defense establishments in support of national defense, security, and foreign policy objectives, which arguably means that security cooperation is the umbrella term. In instances of security assistance would still be security cooperation. This will be important in debates where the negative attempts to define security cooperation as Department of Defense exclusive, and the affirmative wants a more broad interpretation, either to combat actor counter plans or potential disadvantages. Okay, so arguably encompasses. However, there are some definitions that put the two as distinct. Security cooperation being administered by the Department of Defense exclusively, and security assistance being administered by the State Department exclusively. And to support that, there's evidence in the topicality file. It says the distinction between security cooperation and security assistance activities has to do with the agency administering the program. In simplest terms, it is either an activity of the Department of Defense, security cooperation, or the Department of State, security assistance. With these definitions, the negative would be able to limit the topic to activities done by the Department of Defense with North Atlantic Treaty Organization member states or NATO in its totality, okay, which we could talk about with other definitions in the topic. That's extremely important for the negative creating a functional limit on the topic, because if security cooperation does not limit out very many activities, it at least limits out potential actors and provides the negative with a guaranteed ground disad argument related to Department of Defense operations, Department of Defense focus, Department of Defense resources, etc. So the counterplan that utilized a different agent to work with NATO member states would have the net benefit of not, for example, reducing Department of Defense resources. Okay, it would be doing the same activity, but through a different agency, arguably competitive because of the word security cooperation, but not automatically competitive given the terminology in the resolution, because as in the previous slide pointed out, some people define security cooperation as the umbrella term. The second term that I want to get into is artificial intelligence, one of the three areas that the affirmative has to increase security cooperation with NATO member states. Artificial intelligence refers to the ability of machines to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence, but it does not require full automation. Okay, this definition, fairly straightforward. I don't imagine a lot of wiggle room here for creativity on what artificial intelligence means. That being said, there is room for creativity on what potential AFs could look like. For example, affirmatives could increase cooperation with NATO member states regarding UAVs or drones, whether or not to distribute them or regulate their use, or to create some kind of international framework for UAV technology. It could include creating an ethical AI governance or other type of norms for using AI in warfare or using AI in businesses or non-geopolitical sense, but more economic sense or more state craftsman sense. It could include AI testing, AI training, etc. But the term artificial intelligence, as it exists in the resolution, just refers to the machines that perform tasks normally done by humans. Like I said, however, does not require full automation, which means things like drones, which are half automation, half still has some human oversight, would be still arguably and pretty fairly be part of that topic. Okay, so increasing security cooperation on artificial intelligence would include any of those things or any of those potential AFs as described. The second area of the resolution that affirmatives could focus on is biotechnology. Biotechnology is the area of biology that uses living processes, organisms, or systems to manufacture products or technology intended to improve the quality of human life. In the context of security cooperation, however, it may be limited to the exploitation and manipulation of biological systems to benefit overall military capability. And there is evidence in the topicality file that differentiates biotechnology security cooperation from just the term biotechnology generally. Limiting it to military capability would limit out certain biotechnology areas, food, GMOs, arguably vaccines, from the topic. But this is by no means dispositive. There are definitions of biotechnology and security cooperation that includes those things. So I would argue that topical AFs could include vaccine development, bioweapon regulation, biotech interoperability, or more specifically as it relates to the military vaccines, military medicine, military biological weapon regulation, etc. So there's a branch probably that deals with more military use and exploitation of biological systems, and one that just deals with general biological systems and exploiting them to the betterment of human lives, regardless if it's military or not, could still arguably be security cooperation. But in that sense, there does exist a limiting function of the term biotechnology when used in relation with security cooperation. The final term in the resolution that we want to talk about today is cybersecurity. Broadly, cybersecurity is defined as the prevention of damage to, protection of, and restoration of computers, electronic communication systems, electronic communication services, wire communications, and electronic communication, including information contained therein, to ensure its availability, integrity, authentication, confidentiality, and non-repudiation. More narrowly defined, it would exclude offensive cyber operations. So cybersecurity, arguably, the defensive capabilities of cyber technology, okay? Preventing damage, okay? Restoring capabilities when they're attacked, attributing attacks to another country, okay? Anything that is defensively related, okay? That's not to say, again, not dispositive that cybersecurity is merely defensive, okay? There are some definitions of cybersecurity that define it as offensive cyber operations as well. Preventative offensive cyber operations can arguably be done in betterment of the prevention of damage, okay? So gray area here, whether or not topical affirmatives can engage with NATO member states in offensive cyber operations. Topical Fs in this area could include things like cyber information sharing, upgrading legacy systems, which could be general legacy systems, or in particular areas like space or other areas where there are older, more outdated cyber systems that NATO wants to upgrade. More upgrading readiness, training, programs with NATO to where we prepare for potential cyber attacks would all pretty definitively be cybersecurity in the area of security cooperation. Arguably in the area would be synchronizing or clarifying or getting on the same page about Article 5 commitments. Article 5 being the Defense Pact part of the NATO treaty. And that could arguably be more in the offensive realm, okay, because it's saying how NATO would respond to a cyber attack under Article 5. It could arguably be defensive because it would be a response to a cyber attack, okay? But that could be an area where it's a little bit more gray. Is that an offensive cyber operation? Is that defensive cybersecurity? So there will be in my opinion, there will be topicality debates over offensive cybersecurity affirmatives. Okay, there are other limiting terms in the resolution. As we talked about, there's North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which was covered in a separate lecture. Okay, so make sure you watch that. Okay, it goes through the history of NATO, what it is, what it does, what its purpose is, etc. With, okay, could arguably be a limiting term in the resolution. I think there's some good evidence in topicality file that it has to mean the entirety of NATO. So any affirmative that would do cybersecurity with the UK, or cybersecurity with Norway, or biotechnology with Hungary or Turkey, okay, that arguably wouldn't be with the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. That would arguably be counterplaying ground because it is a bilateral security cooperation program, but not with the organization of NATO, with one country. Okay, so that has potential. And then The final term that arguably has potential is substantially increase, but you know, it is what it is. Arguably has a little bit more oomph on this topic because there is a lot of ways the affirmative could massage the status quo. There's a lot of security cooperation that's ongoing with NATO. So there's a lot of things the affirmative could do that seems insignificant or unsubstantial, non-substantial. And there may be something there. But the problem with always this term is there's no intent to define ever what substantially increase means, particularly in relation to increasing security cooperation. It's baseline 30%, 25%, how do you measure that, etc. It gets a little convoluted and arbitrary. And so, potential, but yeah, I'd rather give a different 2 Okay. Anyway, that's the introduction to the terminology in the resolution that I think can provide a limiting function, what potential AFs can look like under those terms, and how the negative can maybe use some of those terms to create distinctions, to guarantee some ground, and create functional limits in an otherwise pretty big topic, I think. So utilizing those terms, I think, can put the negative on a good track, even if those terms really don't exclude very many affirmatives. So with that, thank you for listening to the introduction to terms of the resolution. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the Spartan Debate Institute. Thank you.